2007, I was doing a film in Romania, and I had a week off from filming, and we went to Rome. My wife is Italian, so we wanted to visit Rome. And I was raised Protestant, so I knew nothing about the Orthodox Church. But I loved God very much, and I had been really seeking Him since I was about 12 years old, reading the Scriptures and cultivating some form of prayer life. And when we were visiting Rome, we were overwhelmed by the presence of the martyrs and the saints, to walk the streets where St. Paul and St. Peter walked. And when we went into the Colosseum, there was a huge cross, and my wife said, "Why is there a cross in the Colosseum?" And then we got up closer and realized it was a monument to the martyrs. And something just came over us. We could feel it in the air. And I knew, being there, that I had to start reading Christian history. That I had been reading the Scriptures for many years, but I knew nothing of Christian history. I didn't know what happened after the book of Acts. And so I started reading, and I read the Fathers of the Church, St. Ignatius of Antioch, his letters, and St. Justin Martyr, St. Clement of Rome, so on, St. Cyprian of Carthage, and just my mind started to open up. My heart began to open up. And I wanted to know, because in America there are 20,000, 30,000 different denominations, different churches, and it just didn't make sense to me. So I spent about 3.5 years reading Christian history. Still had not discovered the Orthodox Church, because it's all Catholic and Protestant literature in America. And finally, by the grace of God, I was praying, and the thought came into my mind, because I was in despair, because I could no longer be Protestant, but my heart, I couldn't become Catholic. But I wanted the real church, the church that I was reading in the letters of the Fathers. I wanted that church. I wanted to be a part of that, and I couldn't find it. And this thought came in my mind to really look at the Great Schism, to study what happened. And as soon as that took place, everything opened up. It was like the stars aligned, and that whole search was, the prayer was beginning to be answered. And I knew that I had to become Orthodox. But it took some time. I had to actually go to an Orthodox church before I was ready. Well, it was an interesting experience, because as I was reading many books about the Orthodox Church, finally, I had a dream where I was in an Orthodox church, but I had never been to one yet. And it was very specific, and there were no pews, and there were icons everywhere, and people were lighting candles and crossing themselves and moving about, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was just a presence of prayer. And I woke up, and I wanted to experience that. So I went to a couple local Orthodox churches in Los Angeles, but they weren't quite like the dream that I'd had. And so I kept looking, and online, on the internet, I came across a website where the photo was from my dream. And it was, "This is the church." So I called, and a wonderful priest, Father John Strickland, answered the phone, and he was from my home state, Washington State. He was a convert, and that was the beginning. Well, it's interesting, because when I walked into the church, I left my family at home because I wanted to feel it out myself. And I knew God was taking me here, but it was still very uncomfortable and sort of frightening a little bit. But I walked into the church and I was overwhelmed with this feeling that came over me. And this very, very persistent voice said, "Leave. Run. Get out of here. You don't want to be here. Go now. Go." And it was very strong, and my hands got hot, and I started feeling very anxious, and everything in me wanted to leave. And I thought, what is this? I've been spending years reading, trying to find, and I knew that this is where God was, taking me, and so it was strange. And I prayed, and I felt a different voice, a different presence say, "No, stay for the whole thing, and then you'll know how you feel." So I thought, okay, I'll stay for the whole thing. And it was very uncomfortable for probably about 45 minutes. I didn't know anybody. The icons were still very scary and foreign. It was just all very different. And after the homily, when the cherubic hymn began, I didn't know what it was at the time, but the cherubic hymn began, and I went from feeling completely uncomfortable and anxious. I went from feeling completely uncomfortable and anxious to leave, and the whole place just became like light. And it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It just changed. It sort of transfigured, And I started crying and felt the presence of God so heavily. I'd never seen such beautiful humility before God. And people were crossing themselves so beautifully and saying, "Lord, have mercy." And it just, I started praying to God saying, I don't want to be anywhere else. I just want to be right here with the body of Christ. I don't care about worldly things, what's going on, career pursuits. It doesn't matter. I just want to be right here.